Coming up on this edition of NHRA Today, a preview of eliminations at the Western Auto Nationals. The Ace tackles Indy in one quick cat. Palmdale plays host to Flatheads and Flashbacks. And sportsmen take a northerly heading toward Reading. From Heartland Park in Topeka, Kansas, these stories and more on this edition of NHRA Today. Geographically, Heartland Park, Topeka, site of the Western Auto Nationals, is about as close to the center of the country as possible. And it's an event that reflects Middle American values. If you believe that the family that plays together stays together, so do the Austins, who scored the first ever double in NHRA history here in 1991 as Pat won both Top Fuel and Alcohol Funny Car. If hard work is the key to success is your motto, then you'll admire Mark Oswald, who tuned and drove his way to 3 funny car titles at this track. And for those who adhere to a strict meat and potatoes approach to life, you owe a tip of the cap to the burger and fries guys from McDonald's, who dominated Top Fuel and Funny Car here in 1992. Yes, this is certainly an all-American event, a combination of amber waves of grain and amber lights in green. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of NHRA Today. I'm Steve Evans. We are about, 90 minutes away from eliminations here at the Western Auto Nationals. In the next half hour, we will bring you a preview of today's racing, and we'll show you how a veteran drag racer put on a driving clinic last week in Indy. You're going to love it. We'll also check up on how reigning Winston Comp Eliminator champion Steve Johns fared last weekend back east, and drop by the Antique Nationals out in California. But first, let's turn our attention to the #1 qualifiers here in Topeka. With the Top Fuel story, here's Dave McCulloch.
Steve, the #1 qualifier in Top Fuel for the 4th time in the last 5 races is Scott Coletta. However, Scott is not with us right now. He's still returning to the racetrack after having flown home to Michigan to be with his wife. They're expecting their first child momentarily. But let's talk to the guy responsible for the tune-up on the #1 qualified car, Dick LaHaye. How do you assess your chances today, Dick?
Well, I think they're going to be just fine. We only got 2 shots to qualify at this race, but, you know, the car's very consistent, and Scott drives well, and I think we'll be just fine.
You come into a race with a lot of confidence, don't you?
Well, I guess it's just from all the years of running up and down all these racetracks, and yes, we do, very much so.
Best of luck to you. Right now, let's join Bob Fry with a story on the #1 qualifier in Funny Car.
Thanks, Dave. He might be #2 in your programs, but he's #1 in your hearts, and again, #1 in Fuel Funny Car qualifying. John Force came out in the heat of the afternoon yesterday and qualified with a sensational 5:23. And John, people might be listening and saying, 5:23, here's a car that's been in the 5.0 range. But the way the track was and the way the air was yesterday, 5:23 was a pretty impressive run.
It really was. It was really hot yesterday, but Austin Coyle looked at the computer, Bernie Federley, they looked at it, they said this car will run a mid-20. We knew it when we went up there, and I even called it with the newspaper. I don't know if it'd be low, but I knew that we could run a quicker time than that 27 that was on the board.
You're coming off that Columbus race where you went out in the first round for the first time all season. The 5-race win streak is over. Are you coming into this race a little more focused now?
We've been real focused, and I'm really glad that's all out of the way. That's a lot of hype, and it's good for the record books, but we want to concentrate on trying to get our championship back from the McDonald's team, and we're trying real hard. We want to stay focused, and thinking about that kind of deal, setting records, that don't put points on the board, and that points are what we're after.
And John, you're going to try to do it with one arm here this weekend. Tell us about the bandage.
I made a mistake. I tried to wrestle with my race car out there. You do a lot of driving with one hand because you use the other hand for braking and hitting parachutes. And I pulled some muscles, and the NHRA doctors looked at me and said I was going to be okay, but they're keeping it wrapped.
Well, it's going to be interesting. He says he could beat the other guys with one arm tied behind his back. Let's go to Steve now in Pro Stock.
No, Warren Johnson did not get his doors blown off in qualifying here at Topeka. It was quite the opposite. For the 8th time in 9 races, Warren, you're the #1 qualifier. Incredible streak.
Well, we're enjoying that at this point in time, but we're getting into the hot part of the season now, and today, with the temperature elevated as opposed to what it was the first 2 days of qualifying, who knows what's going to happen today.
What about son Kurt? He's #2, and we all know what that could mean.
Oh, yeah. Well, hopefully it'll mean what's happened in the past. I'd enjoy racing him in the final because that means we'd be helping our points total towards the Winston Championship.
Good luck today.
Thank you very much, Steve.
You know, I don't care what form of motorsports you like. Stay tuned. We have a story about Ed the Ace McCulloch taking on them all.
This is the Sky Sports Event Center with Peter Heartland.
Welcome back to the Western Auto Nationals. You know, Heartland Raceway Park has one of the finest drag strips in all the world, but it also has a world-class road course. And it wouldn't surprise me if one top fuel driver hadn't been spending a little of his spare time honing his driving skills on these curves, because last weekend he showed a lot of talent for turns.
The last time Ed the Ace McCulloch came to Indianapolis Raceway Park, all he did was win the U.S. Nationals. Recently, the Ace returned to IRP, but not to race dragsters. Ed was invited to participate in the first race in the inaugural season of the Fastmasters Championship, which featured names like Bobby Allison, Troy Ruttman, Fred Lorenzen, and Dick Trickle.
They're good. I know they're good. They know they're good, but I'm not going to let them intimidate me. I mean, I'm going to try. I'm going to try hard, and I'll go out there and try to stay out of trouble. And, you know, if I get the opportunity, you know, to go out front, I'm certainly going to try to go out front.
During the competition, the Fastmasters would be racing one of the most exotic cars in the world, the Jaguar XJ220.
All cars are equal. The horsepower, the suspension, everything in the cars are equal, so they should perform equally. And other than that, they're a very expensive race car, and they're just a dynamite piece.
To get used to going fast and turning left, earlier in the week, Ed got in a little practice.
I went down the back straightaway, and I went in really too deep, and I did it. I know what I did. I got out of the throttle too hard, got on the brake, and swapped ends, and I backed it into the wall.
Concerned about his racing background, Ed's crew put a special reminder in the car.
The guys left me a little note on the steering wheel. It says, new pads, no chute. So they gave me some new brake pads, but they still won't put a parachute on it.
After opening ceremonies, the first heat, an oval track competition, got underway. As the green flag waved, Bob Aiken missed a shift, and the Ace took advantage, driving through the masses, past Freddie Lorenzen, and into the #1 spot. Then Jim McElreath got into a tangle with Dick Trickle, sending both drivers out of the race. Ed maintained his lead, while back in the pack, Troy Ruttman attempted a difficult passing maneuver that sent him spinning into the wall, eliminating yet another legend. The Ace never looked back and went on to take his first ever checkered flag. While Ed's crew prepared the car for the second heat, a modified oval road course, McDonald's teammate Cruz Pedregon and the recent Spring Nationals Funny Car champ Gordy Bonin offered their congratulations. Since Ed won the first heat, he would start heat #2 in last place, while road course legends like Dick Greer, Jerry Grant, and Bob Aiken would start at the front. Going into the first turn, the lead cars got stacked up, leaving Dick Greer in first place, followed by Bob Aiken and, believe it or not, drag racer Ed McCulloch. Then Greer spun out of control and watched as Bob Aiken, followed by Ed McCulloch, drove past. To win the competition and qualify for the season-ending championship, all the Ace had to do was finish third or better. But when Ed made a spectacular inside move on Aiken, it was clear he wanted to win. And as Ed drove through his second checkered flag of the day, he impressed not only the drag racing world, but the entire motorsports community.
I know that I was on the track with some of the greatest race car drivers of all time, and that's what really gives me a cold chill, runs up and down my back, to be able to be out on the same track with these guys. Irregardless of how you finish, it was just an honor to be here.
When asked about a possible career change,
my true love and my only love really is NHRA drag racing, and you know, that's where I came up, and that's where I'll stay. This is a lot of fun, but I'm a drag racer.
Well, the Ace proves that age is no hindrance to competitiveness. And recently, a group of veteran and vintage racers of another kind gathered in California for a special event. Los Angeles County Raceway hosted the 23rd Annual Antique Nationals, an event filled with old-timers, even older cars, and old-fashioned good-time fun.
They've been running this race for 100 years, you know, it seems like it. And the cars are real classic. You know, we talk about the flathead Fords and the, you know, whether they be 4 cylinders or 8 cylinders. They're really a fun race.
The Forever 4 Cylinder Club is the originator of nostalgia drag racing. 4-cylinder days were held at Southern California drag strips as early as 1959. Those events later evolved into full nostalgia races called Bonnie and Clyde in 1969. And the event took its current name, the Antique Nationals, in 1970.
We run pre-54 vehicles and early flathead and four-cylinder powered race cars and early motorcycles and various other and sundry early cars of various vintages. And our effort is once a year to get the early cars out that are not seen at the other nostalgia events that are running.
Now this event brings out both the young and the young at heart.
I happen to be real lucky. I bought it about 30 years ago, and then I like to have something to race with. It's got a special head and transmission and everything else. That head is 70 years old. This is my grandson. I'm going to give him a ride in it.
The Antique Nationals features some vehicles that have seen better days to those trying to reclaim their glory of those days.
We just like the four-cylinder motors, and you have to build it. You couldn't buy things that time. This car has the original scatter shield. And we took it in 1959. We won our class at Bakersfield, the Gas and Fuel Championship.
Well, I'm just an old drag racer and manufacturer, still manufacture flathead manifolds, and I'm going to make some more heads. Just strictly just a hobby now with me.
And for many of those attending, it's a pastime fueled not only by love of their cars, but also by their never-ending quest for speed.
I had it one time out and I went 72 miles an hour and I broke the torque converter bolts. But I got twice as many now. So, you know, we'll see what happens.
How fast? That's what I'm going to find out today, how fast it is. I hope that I can do at least 90. We'll see. Watch me.
You're not going to see people run fours, and no one's going to run 300 miles an hour. You know, they want to get to the end and not break their car.
It just isn't working out like it didn't go as fast as, it didn't go half as fast as I thought it would. I have to go back to the drawing board and start all over again.
And you know, you get the feeling that Doc and the others will keep this little piece of the past around for some time.
God willing. I'll be back.
Due to the overwhelming success of last year's inaugural California Hot Rod Reunion, event organizers are happy to announce that another get-together is planned for Bakersfield this November 13th and 14th. California Hot Rod Reunion 2 will include many of the features that made the first event so popular. Displays of some of the sport's most memorable machines, exhibition runs, the Grand Parade, a giant tent barbecue, numerous memory lane displays, as well as nostalgia-style Top Fuel and Junior Fuel eliminations. Racing pioneer Jim Nelson will be the Grand Marshal of the event. And Lifetime Achievement Awards will be presented to such notables as Lou Baney, Joaquin Arnett, Gas Ronda, Sid Masters, Rick Richter, Frank Pedregon Sr., and Jim McClellan. The last time we were here at Heartland Park was, of course, last fall during the home stretch of the Winston title chase. And it was about that time that a Pennsylvania driver mounted his challenge for a competition eliminator crown. Well, last weekend, he was in action back east on his home track, and Bob Fry was there to check it out.
Father's Day at the Winston Drag Racing Series, and a lot of dads were #1 on this day. Well, if you race competition eliminator on the NHRA Winston Trail, when you think #1, you better think about Stevie Johns. In his first real attempt at going for the Winston Championship last season, Steve Johns beat out comps Bess David, Nickens, and Rampy, plus his car owner, Bob Kaiser, to win the coveted title.
Steve's done well, done very well. But Steve is race smart. He's been way back in the days of Frank Iacona and when Dondero was running with Jenkins. I mean, Steve was a kid and he was around all those guys. He had some of the opportunity to reap a lot from those people.
It wasn't until late in the season, right before the U.S. Nationals, that Stevie started thinking seriously about going for the crown. The turning point, the divisional race at Bowling Green, Kentucky.
We rolled in there and qualified 1 or 2, I believe, and it was a stout field of players there in Division III, Lingenfelder, Ambrose, Arnold, Liberty. I can go on and on and on. And we walked out of there winning that and went to Indy with our heads high.
Many racers will tell you that one of the hardest things to do in drag racing is repeat as the Winston champion, especially in the always tough competition eliminator. Johns has only 1 win so far this year, but he hasn't packed it in, and he still hopes to repeat.
This is no picnic either. None of them are. No one said it's going to be easy. So I don't feel bad about my chances this year either, because last year at this time I think I only had 1 win also, and that's what I have right now.
Steve had 2 shots at getting his 2nd win of the season at Maple Grove, but the dragster at the number 1 had to settle for being number 2. Johns had a runner-up finish in the rain-delayed final from last month, and at this race, he fouled in the final against Tony DiCarlo. It was Tony's first win since 1985.
I just figured I'd drive my race, and, you know, if he could beat me, he'd beat me. And that was it.
Here's a group of happy number 1 finishers at Maple Grove. Now let's take a look at the winners' names from Division 1. For NHRA Today, I'm Bob, number 1 in your hearts, Fry.
One thing you have to keep an eye on here at the Western Auto Nationals is the weather. In the summertime, conditions can change just like that. In the past, we have shown you how many teams use conventional weather instruments to make tuning decisions. But as Frank Hawley now tells us, one team has gone high-tech.
Internal combustion engines are a lot like you and me. We both need air and fuel to operate. Now, our fuel comes from food and water. In a race engine, fuel would be nitromethane, alcohol, or gasoline, but we both breathe the same air. And the air conditions or the air quality sometimes indicate the type of performance we can get out of the machine. Now, racers have known this for years, so they go to great lengths to measure air conditions. They'll use an altimeter to measure barometric pressure, and they'll have a quality thermometer and a gauge to measure the humidity. Generally speaking, the better the air conditions, in other words, the higher the barometric pressure, the lower the temperature, and the lower the humidity, the more power you can make, because you can burn more fuel, and when you burn more fuel, you make more power. But take a look at this. This is a computer-based weather station. It measures everything from wind speed to wind direction, temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, and prints all of that information right here on this printer. It's an extremely accurate system that puts a lot more information at the racer's fingertips.
Well, that's how they'll predict the weather around here today. But for a forecast on the action to come, let's once again join my colleagues, starting with the Big Mac.
Steve, my click to pick in Top Fuel is Clayton Harris, and the reason is encased inside that clutch can. It is the new hydraulic clutch system developed by Clayton Harris and SPS, Safety and Performance Systems, and the layback car. He ran 5:02 in qualifying. He ran quicker on every pass down the racetrack, and I think Clayton Harris is the one to watch in Top Fuel. We'll have to find out. Right now, for the Story and Funny Car, here's Bob Fry.
Well, David, while John Force and his Castrol gang were out there setting low elapsed time and moving to the top of the pack in Fuel Funny Car here at Heartland Park, Topeka, this team, Tommy Anderson and Al Hoffman, the blower drive service, were methodically going about the business of putting the race car back together for eliminations. They sat out the final round extremely confident that they can run down Force and the rest of the field here in Funny Car Eliminator. This is my pick to stick. Let's swing over to the Pro Stock pit area now and see if Steve Evans is going with the chalk pick.
No, Bob, I'm not going to pick anybody named Johnson in Pro Stock. That is Steve Schmidt, who drives the Larry Mayola Racing Oldsmobile out of Indianapolis. He is qualified number 3, by far his best performance ever in that area, with a lot of help from a Dale Icke Racing Oldsmobile engine. He's been to the quarterfinals before. He's no rookie. He won't panic. If the Johnsons bobble the ball, he is the guy that could slam dunk it.
NHRA Today is a presentation of Diamond P Sports.